you ever thought what it is like to live in Pittsburgh? Or perhaps you've already made your decision you're moving to Pittsburgh, but you're not quite here yet. This video is going to be a great way to learn what it's like living in Pittsburgh from my perspective. I want to get into all the reasons why I love living in Pittsburgh, as well as be honest and share some of the frustrations and challenges that I have with living in the Pittsburgh area. Hi, I'm Mark McClinchie, and I'm a real estate agent here in the Pittsburgh area. I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of families that have found my videos and connected with me to help them move to the Pittsburgh area. Let's jump right in and talk about the 5 reasons why I love living in the Pittsburgh area. So the most obvious reason is that it's such an easy place to live. Daily chores, whether you're running errands, can be fairly simple to get around town. Whether you live in the North Hills or whether you live in the South Hills or in the city, your daily radius of getting to the grocery store or getting to the cleaners in a small area. And so getting around town, there might be a few areas, some choke points that will have a little bit of congestion, but generally your daily life, getting to and from school, if you have kids, dropping them off, getting to their activities, it all is in a very efficient area. Pittsburgh is not super spread out, and there are a lot of retail corridors and places where you can just do your daily living chores quite easily. Parking generally is pretty simple. So getting around and doing special occasions don't have to be that special. You can kind of go last minute, and it doesn't have to be an entire operation because the city is such a manageable size. I think generally the pace of life in the Pittsburgh area, for me personally, feels very comfortable, and it is not overwhelming. It's not super slow, but it's not super fast either. It's a great balance to get all the advantages of living in an urban area in a big metro area, but it's not so big that you can't get to many places and have a great quality of life. My number 2 reason why I love living in the Pittsburgh area is the people. People here are so friendly and welcoming. They're super down to earth. They're not pretentious. They're just easy to talk to. They're generally curious about you. They ask questions. They're not super nebby, as we say in the Pittsburgh area, whether it's your neighbors or going and meeting strangers at different events and different festivals. The people in the Pittsburgh area are awesome. You know, Pittsburgh has a long history of being a working class city with tons of manufacturing jobs. And although we're not doing as much manufacturing as we used to, the values that were instilled, that work ethic, that grit, that perseverance still is a major part of the identity of the Pittsburgh region. Number 3 on my list of why I love living in the Pittsburgh area is there are so many things to do. It's not a boring place. You will find tons of parks and trails and opportunities to be on the river, whether it's kayaking or canoeing, biking. So with the rivers and the mountains, there are just tons of activities to do if you are into outdoor activities and sports. If you're into food, Pittsburgh is a great food city, lots of restaurants and lots of really neat little neighborhoods. It gives you a great excuse to go out and explore. If you are looking for other things to do, like museums, we have some world-class museums. You'll find festivals in the Pittsburgh area every single weekend to go check those out. It's just fun to get out of your house and into the Pittsburgh region and experience some of these great things to do. Another thing are just easy day trips. Pittsburgh's a nice location geographically to get to so many places. You will not be bored, and there are plenty of things to do. And my 4th reason why I love living in the Pittsburgh area is because it is one of the least expensive cities in America. So whether it's just everyday item like groceries or dining or entertainment, Pittsburgh ranks incredibly high on being very inexpensive comparatively. The cost of housing in the Pittsburgh area, whether you're renting or buying, are well below national averages, making it an appealing place to consider moving to. The other nice feature is that the income and the wages in the Pittsburgh area are near normal averages. Certainly there are other cities where, you know, the pay and the wages are higher, but the cost of living there is super expensive. And finally, my 5th reason reason why I love living in the Pittsburgh area is because of the housing. Inventory here has such character. It's definitely on the older side, and that's something you have to get used to. But if you like character and you like charm and you like quirks and you like things that are interesting and not just cookie cutter, Pittsburgh has an amazing inventory of houses, and there's so many different neighborhoods where you can find different styles of homes. There's just so much variety. I think it's definitely one of the perks of moving to the Pittsburgh area is you're gonna have so many different housing options. So talking about the housing inventory reminds me of what I do when I first start working with a client. I focus on properties that were recently sold, so that immediately gets us a stronger inventory. We're not dealing with a bunch of dead weight and a bunch of stale listings that have been 60, 90 days. I start populating. I work with 50 to 100 homes, and I tell them to ignore location. Don't get into that. Just look at the house itself. I'm getting an idea of what their preferences are just based on what their favorites are. And so then behind the scenes, I'm putting together sort of a profile of what those homes are like. What do they all have in common? And then I start thinking about mapping those types of homes to the neighborhoods where we're most likely to find those homes. If that sounds like a great idea to you, be glad to help you out. Just reach out by phone, by email, and I will get you set up with that past sold exercise so you can figure out what are the neighborhoods that are the right fit for you. Okay, so let's flip the coin. Let's talk about all of the things that frustrate me. No place is perfect. And again, keep in mind that these are my experiences. Here is my list. Number one, you got to start with the weather. And I mainly mean the winter weather. Starting in November, things start to get a little colder. Things start to get rainy and gray. And then that grayness. As you can see behind me, this is a good picture of what a lot of winters look like in the Pittsburgh area. At the time of this recording, we are in early March. The temperature's not too bad. We're in the low 50s right now, but you can see we've got this gray overcast, and this is what the Pittsburgh winters are really tough. They kind of drag on. They can start in November and definitely December, January, February. We get traditional winter weather. It's pretty mild actually though in terms of snowfall and snow accumulation. But I think the real tough part about Pittsburgh winters are when it's gray and dreary. You have to get used to the fact that it is definitely a little bit November, but fully on December, January, February. March is kind of hit or miss, but we've got long gray winters. Number two, unlike most major US cities, there is a lack of diversity in the Pittsburgh region. Most of the neighborhoods in the Pittsburgh area are fairly homogeneous, and some of the immigrant and minority populations that we do have in the Pittsburgh area are kind of spread out throughout the area, and so they're not really concentrated. We do have growing population of immigrants from Latin America, from Bhutan, Nepal, and Uzbekistan. You know, Pittsburgh has such a long history of welcoming immigrants, and it would be great if that was something that we could get better at and increase the diversity of the Pittsburgh region. Number three is we have aging infrastructure. So our roads, especially our bridges, tunnels, and pretty much everything across our transportation system is aging. That aging infrastructure, you also see it with our utilities. We've had some really horrific, tragic accidents of an entire bridge collapsing a few years ago. And so that was due to, an aging infrastructure where things need to be kept up. Has been more funding recently and a definite huge effort amongst the county and the city and the state officials to make sure they're prioritizing which roads and bridges especially get attention and which bridges need updated and upgraded. And so that is a big effort right now, is to try to update our aging infrastructure. Number four on the list is high taxes. One of the biggest taxes that most people pay will be property taxes. So property taxes, say on a $200,000 home might be about 2% of that value. So you're going to be paying, maybe $300, $400 a month for those property taxes. In addition, when you purchase a property, you're going to be paying a transfer tax, to transfer the property from the seller to the buyer. In most areas in Pennsylvania, that is going to be a 2% transfer tax, and it's typically split equally between buyer and seller. However, there are a few areas where it's, a little higher. It might be 3%. So the buyer or seller might be paying 1.25% or 1.5%. But in the city of Pittsburgh, this is the big one, where it is 5% transfer tax. Typically, I tell people to budget for closing costs somewhere around 4%, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But if they're interested in purchasing a property in the city of Pittsburgh, those closing costs are going to be closer to 5 or 6%. And that additional expense is going to be because the transfer tax is so high in the city of Pittsburgh. And last, number 5 on my list is, of course, tunnel traffic. So we have 3 main tunnels in the Pittsburgh area. We've got the Liberty Tunnel coming from the South Hills across the Liberty Bridge into downtown. We've got the Fort Pitt Tunnel, which comes from the Parkway West into downtown. So that's going across the Fort Pitt Bridge. And then, of course, you have the Squirrel Hill Tunnel, which connects the eastern suburbs down to the city of Pittsburgh. So those 3 tunnels definitely have a fair amount of congestion. I would probably say, during rush hour, they all have congestion, but we're not talking about, 20, 25-minute delays. We're typically talking about, if you hit the peak of rush hour, might be an extra 5 minutes if it's the Liberty Tunnel. So the Squirrel Hill Tunnel, in my experience, has been the most frustrating one, where, you're just having those delays and it's just that choke point, and it's still 2 lanes. In some cases it's going from 3 down to 2. So that's going to cause a slowdown. But some of it is just, I think it's just that psychological effect of people going through a tunnel. People just slow down. That is definitely something to be aware of. So that's one of my frustrations. The tunnel traffic, it can be a challenge. I think traffic in other parts of the area, I've talked about this a lot in other videos, traffic generally in the Pittsburgh area is a huge positive. As I mentioned, there could be other examples of things that frustrate people about living in the Pittsburgh area, but those are some of the ones that frustrate me, but they're all super manageable. The trade-off is definitely worth it compared to all the things I love about living in the Pittsburgh area. I would definitely not live anywhere else. Pittsburgh is working toward a better future. There's a lot of exciting developments. I do think the future of Pittsburgh in the coming decades, it's going to continue to be a great place to live, and it's going to add on to that big list of things that make it so livable. So if you are considering a move to the Pittsburgh area, go down into the link in the description and there is a relocation guide. So if you're kind of early on in your research about the Pittsburgh area, you can really dive deep into the different amenities and what it's like living in the Pittsburgh area, as well as deep dives into several popular communities, a lot of communities that my clients are interested in. So download that relocation guide. And if you're a little further on in your research, if you're thinking about a move, give me a call. Let's set up a consultation. Let's figure out, what your needs are, what your timeline is. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Thanks for watching and welcome to Pittsburgh.